Hello, my name's Chris, what's yours? Welcome back to my channel where I'm giving my thoughts on the most recently aired Doctor Who episode, as well as doing a marathon of Doctor Who from the very beginning. Haven't got this one out as quickly as I would have liked. I was away for Easter weekend when this was broadcast, so I did watch it actually on broadcast, but because I was away I didn't have a chance to come back and sort of like give my immediate thoughts, so it's percolated in my head over the last week. I've rewatched it. Now, once again, I'm finding myself a little bit out of sync with the rest of the fans on this one. So, do I think Lux sucks? And the answer is no, I didn't. When I say I'm a little bit out of sync with the rest of fandom on this one, from what I've seen, this one seems to have gone down very, very well indeed. And I can understand why. It's definitely a leap forward from last week. The Robot Revolution, I didn't really like on first viewing. I rewatched it and liked it even less, if anything. With Lux, it's a huge improvement in my opinion. I do have caveats though, so while I've seen quite a sort of like polarized reaction to this one, yes, I have seen some people that hate it because no episode is going to have wall-to-wall blanket praise. I have seen a considerably more amount of people love this episode, like 10 out of 10 stuff. I have seen much less people say it's alright, and that's where I sit. I think it's a solid 6 out of 10 for me. Now, what those caveats do are obviously they're considerable enough to sort of like pull it into the middle ground. And that's a little bit frustrating in and of itself because, to start with, watching this episode, for about the first 2/3, like the first half an hour, I honestly thought this is excellent. And it was so exciting to me because I haven't really enjoyed the show since before the finale of last series. With Joy to the World not taking the taste of Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death away, I went into this series like deflated. Robot Revolution did nothing to help that, but the opening of Lux felt so much more confident and strong, and it was a wise idea to start with the cinema and Mr. Ringading coming to life rather than with the Doctor and Belinda. Picking up with them after the credits was a wise idea. Even that scene with them is like it's so much more fluid than the Robot Revolution was. So picking up with them, even without the fantastic cold open, the episode was on strong footing, and I was kind of lulled into thinking, oh, what a relief, this is fantastic. Now that relief hasn't completely gone because while I did say that I've got caveats that have brought it down to about a 6 out of 10. A 6 out of 10 I will take as a victory after the last run of episodes since Rogue. And when I have these caveats, I tend to sort of like, and I've noticed it, I'm not really best pleased with myself for it, but I begin with the negatives. I go, this is what I didn't like, this is what I didn't like, and I go, so, is there anything I liked? And then I pick on that. I think with this one, because there is actually more stuff that I like than I don't like, I'll focus on like the positives, which tend to be, if people love this episode, it tends to be like a consensus on Mr. Ringading is absolutely brilliant, and Alan Cumming and the animators between them have created the best villain the show has had in a long time. He's vibrant, he's threatening. The jovial nature of a cartoon character like that is put to really sinister use, and it works wonders. First of all, the design of him is spot on. He's not an existing cartoon character from before, but what they've done is they've created a cartoon character that you could fully believe had a run of animated shorts back in the 1940s and the 1950s. He feels like an established cartoon character within that world. Alan Cumming's voice performance only adds to that. Alan Cumming, it doesn't sound like a 21st century actor doing the voice of a fake 1950s cartoon character. Mr. Ringading is believable as a cartoon character from then on every level. When he comes to life, it's absolutely fantastic. And I did not enjoy Joy to the World. This is related, it's not a non sequitur. And I was like bitterly disappointed when the end of Joy to the World came around, because I was like, that was the chance for me to wash away the horrid memories of the series 1 finale, season 1 finale, series 14 finale, season 40 finale. However, the trailer for season 2, series 15, season 41, the trailer piqued my interest because it had that first shot of Mr. Ringading crawling out of the screen. And straight away I went, oh. So even before this season started, I was looking forward to this episode because that imagery was really good. It taps into what Doctor Who does really well, which is like the regular everyday experience becoming quite frightening. But in a way that's never been done before. Like Doctor Who having an animated villain is something that sounds, in essence, like, because of computer effects, Doctor Who has animated villains all of the time. But what I mean is a villain that within the universe is also animated. The Who framed Roger Rabbit-esque style is so out there, even in terms of Doctor Who, that it was exciting they were going to try it. Now, what they did was they made it work. There was a reason for the cartoon character coming to life, and I bought it. I'm not a big fan of the Pantheon, but I think mainly that's because the episodes themselves haven't been particularly well done. I think, like, the idea of gods, I think is valid. Great Show in the Galaxy, I think does. I really like the Great Show in the Galaxy. So it's not like I have anything against the idea of utilising godlike beings. I just, like, even the Celestial Toymaker back in the 60s, don't really care for it. Didn't like the giggle all that much. It was very there was great bits, there was bad, like, it was very uneven. Devil's Cord, wasn't really keen on that, and I will not mention again my thoughts on the season 1 finale because. So it's really just the approaches to them, and here it's done far better. So the existence of the godlike beings and the Pantheon, while I haven't really been all that keen on it so far, the fact that it has been established, it's a good reason as any for Mr. Ringading to come to life. Using those tools in Doctor Who's toolbox to create Mr. Ringading is valid, and I'm really glad they did, because it has resulted in a brilliant villain. Like I say, the episode started off like so incredibly strongly, and it sustained it, I thought, for quite a while. The Doctor and Belinda in 1952. I think, conversely, like, I do wish that they'd gone a little bit further in the segregation of the era. However, I that's just a me thing. I'm not too concerned with how they approached it, because, like, the idea that there were people there that didn't care about bending the rules would have happened. That also rings true for me. I think all it really did need was the Doctor looking at the colour of his skin and being a bit uneasy about it. His justification to Belinda about why he's not focusing on that and is more focusing on the matter in hand with the cinema worked incredibly well for me, and it gave Ncuti a really excellent scene. And I continue to really like his approach to the Doctor. His take on the Doctor is one I like. Last season I was talking about how with each episode he was sort of like creeping up very rapidly in my list of favourite Doctors. He's plateaued a bit, like he hasn't really continued to ascend. I haven't actually sat down and decided what's my ranking of the Doctors now that Ncuti's here, so I don't really know where he sits at the moment. I would guess probably, though, just above the middle. That's not to say that I thought he was bad when he started. It's just that because I'm so familiar with the show and my favourites are all like dear to me, when a new Doctor comes in, they've kind of got to prove themselves, and that's true of any Doctor. So Ncuti sort of like like I said, he hit the ground running in the giggle, and then throughout season 1, sort of like. So he didn't start right at the bottom, is what I'm saying. But he did sort of like obviously start fairly low down, because every Doctor has to prove themselves. Then he rose very quickly, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then sort of plateaued. And I think part of that is the stories I haven't enjoyed have sort of stopped short of giving him like truly meaty stuff. I still thought he was great in them, but in Lux, I do think it gives him those hero moments and those moments that I think make him shine. And that's the scene I'm talking about. He actually says, "I shine." And I found that hard to disagree with. And then you hit the 2/3 point. And when I said earlier on in the video, most would be like, "Oh, what happens half an hour in?" It's the fan scene. Now, the fan scene isn't necessarily an issue for me in terms of what it did. I know that some people were mortified for several reasons. Some people were mortified because they felt it was sneering at fans, and some people were mortified because they didn't want Doctor Who to do this. They didn't want Doctor Who to address its nature as a fictional show. And I could sympathise, but I didn't find them any more sneery towards fans than WizKid, and I've got no problem with WizKid and Great Show in the Galaxy. So that's not really a criticism I have. Equally, the idea of Doctor Who acknowledging its nature as a fictional show, I've more sympathy for that. However, I don't share it as a criticism. The idea of characters discovering they're fictional has been around for far longer than a lot of people think. I think even as far back as Arabian Nights, it happens in the Arabian Nights. More recently, Red Dwarf Back to Earth did it. Just before that, League of Gentlemen's Apocalypse did it. And to be honest, as somebody that sort of like really enjoys the mechanics and engineering of storytelling, I love it when it happens. I'm one of the Red Dwarf fans that don't really have an issue with Back to Earth playing with that side of things. I also think the League of Gentlemen's Apocalypse is good, and it approaches the idea of characters discovering they're fictional in a really interesting way. Doctor Who doing it, I think part of Doctor Who's appeal is that it's just the sort of like what if. You know, Russell T Davies has mentioned loads of times about wanting, like as a kid, turning the corner and wanting to see the TARDIS there. So the idea of like the Doctor Who is out there somewhere. If the Doctor realises he's fictional, that kind of like takes that away. If the fans then become an active player in the story, it kind of removes the wonder of the show to a degree. So I understand. That's why I've got more sympathy for it. However, there is a built-in device within Doctor Who and its lore that this sort of thing can happen. The land of fiction, and in that story, back in 1968, there is the threat of the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe becoming fictional. If you want to do like a plot twist where the Doctor has ended back up in the land of fiction and has become fictional, that would work for me because of what we've seen previously in the show. So the idea of Doctor Who playing with it is actually, the more I think about it, quite exciting. And there are hints, obviously, that the finale this year is called The Reality War. There have been fourth wall breaks from Mrs. Flood, like going back to the church on Ruby Road. So I do think that it's in Doctor Who's wheelhouse to be able to do this, and also to do it justice. Those are my cards on the table when it comes to the meta scene with the fans. I do very much have a problem with it though, and I do think it ruined the episode. Why? Well, really all it is that that's meant to be like a breathless chase where the Doctor and Belinda are trying to escape a realm they have very little understanding of. And it just messes with the pacing. Like a really pacey chase comes to a stop for 5 minutes because the Doctor sits down and has a cup of tea with somebody. It messes with the momentum of the entire episode for me. And because we spend so long with them, and like I do honestly, actually, the domestic setting of it kind of, the domestic and contemporary setting does sort of mess with the world that Lux, the episode, has built up until that point. So it's not that I have a problem with it as an idea, It's just that I do think it's quite bungled here, and it does kind of grind the episode to a halt. So it's not like I watched it and went, these fans are really annoying. This idea of the Doctor being fictional, or maybe being fictional, I don't really have a problem with that. I have a problem with it taking place at that point in this episode. And because it didn't, like, structurally it didn't work as part of the episode, but structurally it didn't work in and of itself either for me, because while I love this idea of characters discovering they're fictional, being able to play with that, like, I think I would love it dearly, but I feel like it should have been its own episode rather than this scene here, then, because it kind of like I say, it puts the brakes on. But also the internal logic of it doesn't really make sense to me either, because and I don't know whether or not it's that Russell T Davies has seen this really clever idea and think that even just dipping your toe in that sandbox is clever. It's because, like, so for example, the gist of that scene is that the fans are not real and the Doctor and Belinda are not fictional. But that isn't a revelation that is seeded and becomes like a twist that makes you go, oh. The way it's done is literally the Doctor turns up and goes, so I'm fictional and you watch me on the telly. And then later on, the scene literally just goes, actually no, it's the other way around. So okay, so why did they... What? It honestly just felt like the show just went, we're just going to dip our toe in this. It's like, no, more effort needs to go in to making an idea as big and as clever as that work. And unfortunately that fell a little bit short for me. So I hope that when we do revisit this idea of fiction and reality blending in together, that it's actually done with more aplomb and like more flair and a little bit more logic. And yes, it's probably setting things up for later on. The blurring of fiction and reality, I do think, will come into play later on in the series. It has to, with the fourth wall breaks and the fact that it's called the reality war. So it's just that it feels then like this episode just stops for setup for later on before it then carries on. And because I was enjoying the episode so much, like, I do find myself going, it's a pit stop I didn't want. I was quite happy for the journey to keep going, but it pulls into the services, and not really good services either. It pulls into, like, you know, Hilton Park on the M6 or something, and because of that, it never really gets back. So I did, like, the climax is like, okay, the idea of death to the god of death bringing life and undoing everything that Sutek did didn't really make sense to me, and it's still not something I like. The idea of light defeating the god of light is in the same ballpark. However, the imagery and the explanation of Lux expanding into nothing is done far better here. While it might seem like the everybody trapped in the film, the 15 people from the start of the episode, being released, and it looks a little bit like, oh, in the same way that everything Sutek did got undone, everything Lux did has got undone as well. That's still a criticism I have, even though I guess, like, the film being set on fire and the Doctor and Belinda escaping, the same happened there. And when someone pointed that out to me, I was like, okay, I could buy that. However, the Doctor and Belinda were active participants in their own escape from that. So even though I could vaguely buy it, I have to squint a little bit, because everybody coming back at the end, it still feels hand-wavy. Not that I'm like a bloodthirsty kind of, like, I want everyone to die. This episode isn't without sacrifice, because Mr. Pye, the projectionist, who Linus Roach does quietly excellent work as that character. He sacrifices himself, so it's not without that, and there are stakes and there are consequences, which is why this episode doesn't end like on a damp squib. It ends sort of like ever so slightly short of what I wanted, and like I say, the diversion about 2/3 of the way through didn't really work for me in practice. In theory, I've got no problem with Doctor Who playing with meta and playing with fiction and reality and being meta in that way. I just don't really like that scene in this episode there. It made no sense to me structurally. I also think that it was missing one slight one slightly small moment at the very beginning of the episode that would have made it tie up much neater at the end. Because in the middle, we find out about Lux's hold over Pi by bringing his dead wife back to life. And that comes like almost a little bit almost out of nowhere. What I would have liked, I think, was a tiny little moment in that first scene. And I've watched it twice now and I didn't see one, so I don't think I'm missing it. But if, like, it's very easy to suggest that Pi has lost somebody as we first meet him. He goes about his job, getting the film, putting the cartoon on. He could have like a tiny little moment with a photograph of his dead wife, and storytelling and visual storytelling and television. The language of it is so ingrained in us now that could have been suggested that his wife was dead in just like a tiny few seconds. And this episode is like 3 minutes shorter, I think, than the Robot Revolution, so there's time for that. And it just would have then sort of like, we wouldn't have had to do as much flashback stuff kind of out of nowhere. Like, it would have been much easier to then say that's the hold that Lux had over Mr. Pi, and we'd have been able to move on. So it's like a lot of tiny little wrinkles that I feel like if this had been ironed out, this would be like an 8 out of 10 for me. Like I say, those are the caveats that have brought it down. It probably would have been like an 8 out of 10. And possibly even, because Mr. Ringading and Alan Cumming and the animators that drew was so good, that if more time had been spent just in that world without the diversion, because I think that's enough to sustain a story by itself, then it would have been maybe even a 9. But these caveats have brought it down to about a 6, and maybe on a third viewing that could shoot up to a 6.5. I watched it again a second time and I was like, really hope actually that I'll like this a bit more. Oh well. 6 out of 10 though. Much better than last week. And against my better judgment, because I've been burned before, and certainly by the run of episodes that Legend of Ruby Sunday, Empire of Death, Joy to the World and Robot Revolution, I am a little bit excited for The Well. And as I record this, it's on tomorrow. And hopefully as this video goes out, it's on tomorrow. And hopefully then I'll get the video out quicker than I got Lux out. Now obviously the leaks, the rumours, are because there's an unexpected sequel in this season, are that it could be, this is a sequel to Midnight, or a prequel. A sequel from the Doctor's point of view and our point of view, prequel from the planet's point of view. Not entirely against that. It needs to be good in order to work. But even if it isn't, it doesn't necessarily. It's not going to ruin Midnight for me retroactively. Midnight is still an excellent episode. It's my favourite Russell T Davies episode. So that will still exist, even if this sequel, if it is a sequel, is substandard. But it also might not be. It might be great. And then, of course, it might not be the surprise sequel. It might not be a sequel to Midnight. The surprise sequel later on in the series could be the Interstellar Song Contest, and it could be a sequel to The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. I would prefer that. But I'm getting ahead of ourselves anyway. Tomorrow is The Well. Thank you, as ever. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, then do go back and run the Doctor Who Marathon alongside us. I was correct. I thought I would get this video out before I got the Android Invasion out. And because new Doctor Who is on at the moment, that might take precedence before I get back to the marathon. However, the next in the Doctor Who Marathon is the Android Invasion. We're approaching the end of season 13. We're in the latter half of it. It'd be great to have you along. So if you haven't already, please do hit that like button if you've enjoyed this. It really does help the channel. And what did you think of Lux? Do you think it was top tier, or do you think it was bottom drawer? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon, very soon I hope, for The Well. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I will see you soon.